Hello, you beautiful people. Today we are here to talk about some players that I would stop trading for in your fantasy basketball leagues. So I've been going around my Discord comments sections of my channel and other fantasy channels and looking at some players that have been being mentioned a lot in terms of people are asking if they should trade for them or not. So I'm going to go ahead today, go through a few of the most popular requests and sort of talk about my opinion on whether you should trade for them, why I think you shouldn't trade for them, and just overall what you should do with them if they're on your team. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started here. The first player that I want to talk about is Damian Lillard. And I've talked about him in other videos, but they were longer videos, and I don't know if everyone was watching them to completion. But I am so against trading for Damian Lillard right now. It's crazy. I genuinely don't understand why people want to take the risk. Like, don't get me wrong, I ranked Dame Lillard as a top 10 fantasy player at the start of the year. That was before all this news of the abdominal injury came out. And he's missed multiple stretches of games now with it. And we don't know if this is going to be a recurring thing. We don't know if he's going to get surgery and miss the rest of the season. Like, don't get me wrong, when Dame Lillard plays, he's a top 10 per game fantasy player. Even when he was in a slump at the start of the season, I do truly still think he is top 10. But it's just not worth the risk at all in the slightest, in my opinion, because why would you trade for him when there's plenty of other more consistent players that we don't have to worry that they're going to stop playing for the entire season because they need a surgery? Like, that is such an extreme reason to not have someone on your team. I just don't understand why people are trying to trade for him. And if we look at some of the recent trades on the Yahoo recent fantasy trade market, he was traded for John Morant, PJ Washington. He was traded for Luka Doncic. He was traded for Trae Young, and he was traded for Devin Booker. Obviously, Devin Booker isn't extreme as the other one, but then he was also traded for players like Tyler Hero and Josh Giddey. And that's a little bit like that's a bit ridiculous in my opinion. Like, if you can get him for Josh Giddey, then sure, why not? I'm more when I say stop trading for him, don't give up like a Luka, a Ja, or anyone that's near the top 10 that isn't at risk of having their season just end because they need a surgery. Like, in my opinion, it's just so ridiculous to like risk your entire fantasy season pretty much if you trade like a huge piece of your team for someone that could inevitably not stop playing. I just don't see why people would want to take that risk at all. So yeah, that's why I'm against trading for Damian Lillard. Like I mentioned, if you can get him for like Josh Giddey or someone like that, then by all means go ahead if he stops playing. I mean, it is a loss, but it's not as huge of a loss. But don't trade like a top 30 player for him. I just don't think it's worth it at all. And who knows, maybe I'll be wrong and he'll play the whole season and put up top 10 numbers. But even then, I'm not taking the risk. I'm just steering clear of Damian Lillard. If someone's in your league, they're probably trying to offer him to you right now. And most of us are already aware that we shouldn't trade for Damian Lillard, but this is more for people who are newer to fantasy or maybe aren't as aware of the situation surrounding Dame. Don't trade for him right now. It's just not worth it this season. Let someone else deal with his issues and try to target some other guys that are more reliable fantasy players. So next up is Tyrese Haliburton, and he's a player that I would avoid for a different reason. It's more because he's just a huge sell high right now. His minutes are up. He's playing 38 minutes a game the last 7 days. He's averaging 20 points per game, which is an 8-point increase from his season average, and he's averaging 10 assists. And I think the majority of us are aware that it's mainly just due to all the absences that the Kings are facing right now. Excuse me, Fox is missing time. That's the main reason that Haliburton's seen such an increase in his usage rate, and he's looked nuts running the point guard. So it remains to be seen if Fox is going to be traded at the deadline and they're sort of just going to hand the team completely over to Haliburton. And I'm not comfortable enough in relying on the Kings management to make like sound decisions with anything that they do with their team. So I'm not going to risk it and trade for Haliburton right now and be like, oh, maybe they'll trade Fox at the deadline. This is the Sacramento Kings we're talking about, one of the worst franchises in the league, notorious for making like terrible decisions. And I don't really trust them that they're going to move Fox or maybe whatever, do the right thing to like build around these two if they want to keep them together or whatnot. But yeah, I would just avoid Haliburton because his value is just astronomically high at the moment because we've seen what he can do when he's running the point guard, when he has the ball in his hands more often. And I just don't think it's sustainable for the season. Fox is going to be back into the lineup when he's out of the protocols, and I do think they'll probably keep them together this season. And we're just going to see Haliburton see a pretty vicious regress back to where he was at the start of the season because he's only averaging like 36 fantasy points per game right now, and I do think that is pretty indicative of where he's going to end up just like by the end of the season. I don't see that taking too big of an increase, and whereas the last 7 days he's averaging like upwards of 50 plus. So I would definitely avoid trading for Tyrese Haliburton right now. I don't think this production is sustainable for very obvious reasons like I already mentioned, and for that reason I'm just not going to trade for him. If he's on my team, I'm definitely trying to sell high. I couldn't give you like an exact description of where his value's at right now because it's very hard to gauge. It's very league dependent on guys who are just on like 4-game hot streaks. Because if you're in a competitive league, I don't think anyone's really budging that much. But if you're in like a newer league, maybe someone's getting caught up in the recent performances, you can try to sell the 10 assists per game, especially if you're in a categories league. And like he's been decent in the peripheral stats outside of scoring this season anyway, but it's mainly just the scoring increase. I don't think those numbers are going to last. And for that reason, I would just avoid trading for him right now if he's not on your fantasy team. And now a quick word from our sponsors, Manscaped.
Ho, 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 gentlemen. The holidays have come early this year as Manscaped have the gift that keeps on trimming. Santa's beard isn't so appealing when it's coming out of your trousers, and that's why Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have you covered this holiday season. Now available in your country, join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped to keep their trees trimmed and ornaments polished. Go to manscaped.com and use the code TBP for 20% off and free shipping. So, jingle balls to the walls, fellas. Let's listen up. It's time to kill 2 birds with 1 trimmer and get yourself and your partner a gift. I'm talking about the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. I mean, we've all had that experience where going to basketball practice, try to do a little shave before you get there, and you get a nick, and then you're running, it's sweating, it's painful. I mean, if you know, you know. Like, we've all been there. The new Performance Package 4.0 includes the Lawnmower 4.0, which helps to reduce nicks and give you an overall cleaner, better shave. Inside the Performance Package 4.0, you'll find the signature Lawnmower 4.0. This electric trimmer has proprietary advanced skin-safe technology to reduce cuts on your nuts. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. It's like a gift to your partner with less mess. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 also includes the Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant, moisturizer, and toner. This hygiene bundle will also come with a pair of Manscaped anti-chafing boxers that is the perfect wrapping for your presents. Personally, I tried them out the other day and they were very comfortable, highly recommend. The Manscaped Performance Package comes with all the tools to clean up its delicate places. Included in this new package is the Weed Whacker Ear and Nose Trimmer, which is waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM, motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. Nobody, not even Santa, wants hairs under their chimney. Manscaped is going beyond the groin with their new refined cologne, which offers a light yet masculine, pleasing fragrance that will leave your partner on the naughty list this year. 'Tis the season to load up with Manscaped products, so get yourself, your dad, your brother, and your friends the best gift of all, the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. Get 20% off and free shipping when you use the code TBP at manscaped.com. So that's getting 20% off free shipping worldwide if you use the code TBP at manscaped.com. Don't be sure to check it out in the link in the description. Go to manscaped.com. Don't forget to use the code. Clean up your nuts and make Santa proud this year. Shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it.
Alright, so next up we sort of have a 2-for-1, and it's going to be Jalen Brunson and Dorian Finney-Smith, and this is more preemptive than anything. I mean, they both had very solid games yesterday against the Timberwolves, but if we're looking forward, if we're trying to forecast for the week, the Mavs are missing Doncic, Porzingis, Hardaway Jr. Porzingis isn't in the protocols yet, but Hardaway and Luka Doncic are, as well as Trey Burks. Porzingis has just been dealing with a toe injury, and even if he plays, I still think Brunson's value is going to be very inflated for the week because whenever Luka is out, he puts up some ridiculous fantasy numbers, and I did just put him on my must-roster video, and his roster percentage has increased by like 9% since then, so it's good to see, and he definitely belongs on rosters, but just don't try to trade for him now or at the end of the week. Don't get me wrong, he's still very solid even when Luka Doncic does play, but just for this extended period of time where Luka Doncic is going to be out, it's really just not worth your time to trade for Jalen Brunson, in my opinion. You're going to have to give up a significant amount to get him, more than you would at any other point in the season, and he's going to come back down to earth when Luka gets back into the lineup. Still rosterable, don't get me wrong, but it's just not worth trading for right now because his value is going to be inflated. And if we look at some recent trades he was involved in, I mean, someone did Jalen Brunson and D'Angelo Russell for Ja Morant, and while that's not the worst trade in the world, I definitely preferred Ja Morant's side, and there haven't been too many trades outside of that so far, but like I said, this is more of a preemptive one because I'm assuming that he's going to have a very big week in terms of fantasy production, so don't be surprised when he puts up some big numbers and don't get too caught up in it. Just know it's mainly because Tim Hardaway and Luka Doncic are out, and he's going to fall back down around low 30s in terms of fantasy points per game by the end of the season. So similarly for Dorian Finney-Smith, he's just become a pickup because of the absences that the Mavericks have been facing. But it looks like the NBA is trying to move away from postponing games now that they've implemented their new, like, you can pick up G League players or whatever to fill the gaps in your team. I do think he's going to be able to put up some huge fantasy numbers this week, like for the same reason as Brunson, just the absences that they're dealing with. Kleber's out too, Maxi Kleber, I should say, so that's mainly where Dorian Finney-Smith's production is going to come from, absorbing some of those minutes. But yeah, he's been getting around 40 minutes per game the last 7 days. Obviously, his numbers are going to see an increase when that happens, and I would just avoid trading for him this week. Who knows? He's definitely must roster. Like, if he's on your waiver wire, I would like pause this video and go pick him up. But don't trade for him when somebody's got him on their team at the end of the week. If you're like, damn, I really need a small forward or a power forward that's like not like one of the best tiers, but like a solid, consistent one. Dorian Finney-Smith isn't going to be that for the season, and just be aware of that if you try to trade for him. All right, so this next one I would have made a bit earlier, but I didn't know John Morant was coming back so soon. But it's going to be Desmond Bane, and I feel like Bane. The only reason I would not trade for him is that I do view him as a bit of a sell high, just because I'm concerned that John Morant's return to the lineup is going to affect his field goal attempts. And out of all of the Grizzlies starters, he was the one that I was concerned was going to take the biggest hit in terms of their fantasy impact when John Morant returned. And don't get me wrong, he's still going to be absolutely must roster, but he's been averaging around 20 points per game in the absence of Morant, and I don't see that continuing. I think it'll decrease down to back around 15 where he was at before Ja went down. And that's for that reason alone. Like, if he's on my team, I'm definitely trying to sell him, and if he's not on my team, I don't think it's worth trading for him right now. I mean, maybe he'll prove me wrong and he'll keep up this production with Ja, but I'm pretty skeptical that that's going to be the case. John Morant's just like their leading field goal attempts per game. He's their main ball handler. He's taking the ball out of Bane's hands, whereas he was creating more in Ja's absence. And I know he had a good game against OKC with Ja back into the lineup, but that was Ja's first game back. He was getting back into the swing of things, working his way back into it. And I feel like once he becomes fully healthy and completely back integrated into the Grizzlies lineup, we're going to see a decrease in Desmond Bane's production. Not like a huge fall off, but I don't think he's going to be at the level he's at right now. And if we look at some recent trades involving him, he was traded for OG Anunoby, Darius Garland, him and Jakob Poeltl for Miles Turner. He was traded for Haliburton, Drew Holiday. I mean, it's just crazy what you can get away with trading him for right now. And I don't really see why. He was traded for Terry Rozier as well, which if you can get Terry Rozier for Desmond Bane, I think that's a steal. But when you see trades like that, it just tells me that if you don't have him on your team, I wouldn't trade for him right now, because if that's any indication of where some people are valuing him at the moment, I think that's way too high for Desmond Bane. I don't think that's realistic, and that's why I just avoid trading for him, man. I don't think you're going to be getting your money's worth for him. If he's on your team, absolutely try to sell high, but if he's not on your team, I'm letting him chill wherever he's at, not trying to put any trade packages together for him, because I just think his value's a bit inflated. And who knows, maybe we wait a few games, see how he looks with John Morant. If it looks like I'm completely wrong in like a week or so, then then maybe we reevaluate. But for now, I'm just playing it safe, and I'm not trading for Desmond Bane. All right, and lastly, and this one's no surprise, I think a lot of people are aware of this one. I would not trade for Kyrie Irving right now. I feel like if you have him on your team, this is your best time to trade him away before it fully sets in how few games he's going to be playing. If he's just participating in away games, he's only playing in like 23 games or something this season. And that's if it all goes according to plan. Like if he gets an injury and only plays 17 games or something like that, then it's even worse of a pickup. But for now, if you're picking him up, if you're looking long term, if when you look at like when the fantasy playoffs would be at, you might only get like 4 games out of Kyrie if your playoffs end around April 3rd. If it's March 27th, you're getting 5, and if it's March 20th, you're getting like 5 games out of him. And is that really worth it when you could just have like a streaming spot instead and just pick up like 4 or 5 different players? Are they going to give you more value than Kyrie Irving? I mean, it remains to be seen. Don't get me wrong. Like, per game, Kyrie is an outstanding fantasy performer. But when he's only playing in so few games, if he has one bad game in the week, like if let's say he has a dud where he puts up like 25 fantasy points or something, if that happens, he's pretty much sunk you for the week, because you have to hold on to him. And like he'll probably average like upwards of 45 fantasy points per game. But it's just even like you're taking a huge risk if he's on your team. I picked him up in my league just for the sole purpose of trying to trade him. Haven't had much luck so far, but I mean, we'll keep him on your roster because I do think he has to be on a roster. I'm just ashamed that if it's your team, I would prefer if he wasn't there, but you can't really leave him on the waiver wire, because if someone picks him up for a matchup and he goes off for like 60 fantasy points, that could really help win them like a close matchup for the week. So I do think you do have to roster Kyrie Irving. It's just painful that that's the case, if that makes sense. So if we look at recent trades involving him, he was traded for Gordon Hayward, Tyler Hero, Drew Holiday, and Chris Paul. And if you traded for Chris Paul, that just hold this L, man. Like, that's ridiculous. You're getting a guy that's playing in half of the games for this season. He's already in the protocols right now, so he's going to be missing like the next 2 or 3 games at the very least. And it's just a pain in the ass to have to deal with that, man. There's going to be weeks where they only have 1 or 2 games that are away games. And do you really want, like, you're holding on to someone who's going to give you like maybe 40 fantasy points in a week when you could just have a streaming spot instead? So it's just a tough decision. You sort of have to look at where your team's at right now in the standings. If you're ranked like 1-8 in your league, I don't really know if you can be holding Kyrie at that point. You might as well just have to take whatever trade you can get for him. But if you're like best team in your league, like in my league that I picked him up in an 8 team, I'm 8-1 right now. So I was like, I might as well pick Kyrie up. I don't want to give someone else the opportunity to pick him up and sort of just beat me if he goes off 1 game week or something. So that was why I was comfortable taking the risk. And I mean, who knows? We can't really speculate on whether he's going to get vaccinated or if he's going to be able to play in home games at some point. there's no point really speculating because we just have no idea how things are going to go right now. But I do think when he does play, he's going to put up huge minutes. I think KD and Harden will definitely take some games off, like rest a few games on their away schedule because they can rely more on Kyrie Irving. But even in spite of that, I don't think it's worth trading for him. You're just not, the games just aren't there, man. Like, only playing in half your games is just ridiculous. I don't think it's worth trading for, especially because he has like the name value behind him as well. That's like an additional factor. And when people are trading like Drew Holiday and Chris Paul for him, in my opinion, I'm not touching Kyrie. So if I assume whoever has him in your league is offering him around right now, just stay smarter. Don't bother, man. Like, let him be someone else's problem. It's just such a problematic situation, and it can really sort of tank your fantasy team, especially if he's taking up a streaming spot. Because, like I mentioned, you can't really drop him because there is the potential that he goes off for like in 2 games. If he has like 2 50-point fantasy games in a week, then that is a significant contribution to your team. But just the risk that he can have one off game and sort of sink you for the week is there as well. So it's sort of a high risk, high reward situation, and I like to play it safe with my fantasy team, and I'm sure most of you do as well. And for that reason, I'm just not going to trade for Kyrie Irving. Let someone else have him. If he can be their problem for the season, you guys can just do your thing and hold on to your team. So that's going to do it for the video. I hope this helped you guys out. This was more for people who are newer to fantasy or maybe not as know about as much about it as some of the rest of you might. So don't be a dick in the comments to anyone who's new and doesn't know as much as you. Just feel free to help everyone out. This is a helpful community. We don't want to just like shame someone because they're new to fantasy. Everybody starts somewhere. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I hope you guys all have a great rest of your day.